camera's the
All right. This is Jason Bollinger. He's running for U.S. Senate. His website says, Oklahomans deserve a senator who will fight for things that are important to us in our daily lives. We need affordable health care and a government that works. We want politicians who don't waste our money or spend time dividing us against each other. Oklahomans need a better infrastructure, an improved education system, security for our nation, and so much more. Jason, yay! Thank you for coming.
Of course. Well, thank you all for having me. It's so great to be with a group that is nonpartisan and truly just cares about Oklahoma and the issues that we all face here and wants better for our state. And that's the reason I'm running. I'm a lifelong Oklahoman. I'm an attorney in Oklahoma City, and I grew up in rural southwest Oklahoma, in Carter, Oklahoma. You may be familiar. It's in Buchan County, about halfway between Mangum and Elk City. Graduated from Merritt High School in Elk City, and then went on to Southwestern and then OU for undergrad and law school at OU. And my mom is a public school teacher. My dad's the city manager in the town where I grew up. And so really learned early on the value of public service, the value of helping your neighbors, and just being involved in your community and doing right by others. After law school, I had the opportunity to go to the U.S. Department of State, and I worked in the Office of the Legal Advisor there. That was during the Trump administration. So it was sort of chaotic, but I think regardless of your politics there, you can agree that was some chaos. But I learned a lot there, and one thing I saw quickly was how disconnected our politicians are, including the entirety of our delegation from Oklahoma, from the needs and wants of everyday Oklahomans. I was shocked to see on a daily basis when engaging with our federal delegation, the things that they thought were priorities that if I remember thinking at the time, if the people I grew up with in Oklahoma, my friends and colleagues in Oklahoma City knew that our elected leaders were doing these things and that they were spending time and resources on those things, they'd be upset. And then also realizing that our elected leaders in DC, because they've been there so long, because they're so insulated from the outside world, have very little idea of what it is like to live in Oklahoma, to be an Oklahoman, to face the struggles that people across our state face on a daily basis. And here's one good example. So I was at the State Department in the Office of the Legal Advisor. It was in the second year of the Trump administration, and something that our office did was receive congressional requests. So members of Congress submitting questions to the State Department about what the agency's doing. It wasn't abnormal. We got a lot of them, and we get one from a senator from Oklahoma, Senator James Langford, and came across my desk, and I'm thinking, okay, at the time we're renegotiating NAFTA, which was becoming the USMCA agreement. You know, NAFTA is important to Oklahoma because of the farming industry here. Surely that's what Senator Langford's concerned about. No, Senator Langford was wanting copies of Hillary Clinton's emails. And this is the second year of the Trump administration, 2 years after Hillary Clinton had lost and conceded the election. Had absolutely nothing to do with the people of Oklahoma, wasn't spending his time bettering the lives of Oklahomans. No, he was doing what his cronies in the Republican Party, the leadership, were telling him to do, what his big donors were telling him to do. And that was really my first taste of just how beyond the pale the system is. You know, a lot of people don't realize, and those who realize a lot of times are protected by it. And so that kind of sparked me to get involved and figure out where I would fit in. And so we launched this campaign back at the end of September. I was the first candidate to launch for this race. And really it has been a grassroots campaign from day one, and reaching out to voters regardless of political affiliation. We have Republican and Democratic support, just people who want better for Oklahoma. Our platform is something that really speaks to people regardless of political party. Something that is incredibly important to me, and I think incredibly important for the future of our state, is improving infrastructure, especially in our rural areas. I grew up in a rural area, and early on in the campaign, we went out to the public school where I went to school, and okay, what are issues are you having? And it's something that, having lived in Oklahoma City for 10 years, would never have dawned on me. It's access to high-speed internet. There are students in that school who do not have, not just don't have access to high speed, they do not have access to internet at all. And I've been critical of the Biden administration on this issue because recently we've seen some initiatives to help pay for internet for people in low-income areas. Well, that does Oklahomans in these internet deserts absolutely no good. We need to be spending the money first on ensuring that everyone has access, and then, of course, we need to be sure that everyone then can afford it. But that's one thing. I think that impacts both our education system. It also impacts the local economies in rural Oklahoma because we've all seen a shift in the way people work in this state, and the number of people working remotely, if they had the ability to leave Tulsa or Oklahoma City or even Edmond and work remotely in Guthrie or somewhere like that with the same internet speed and the same resources, you can't tell me that these local economies wouldn't be bolstered by that. In addition, on the infrastructure front, we've got, in the western part of the state, we've got severe drought like we've never seen, well, really since the Dust Bowl. In the eastern part of the state, we've got extreme flooding. We need to be sure that we are rebuilding the infrastructure to combat those things. Yes, it's climate change, but also we put things in place back in the 20s and 30s to help this, such as our shelter belts in the western part of the state, which have now died and not been replaced. Water conservation measures in the western part of the state that are no longer taking place. And then the eastern part of the state, we've got to rebuild and continue to construct our flood control measures. Next on our platform is access to health care. I am supportive of a public option for everyone to have access to health care, but particularly in our rural areas. I go back to the area where I grew up for extreme care, anything other than minor surgeries or just clinical visits. You got to travel an hour or two, sometimes more, for the health care you need. And that's not just individuals; it's even worse for our veterans. We are looking at right now closing one of our 3 veterans facilities here in Oklahoma, leaving only Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And that veterans facility in Muskogee services all of southeast Oklahoma, as well as northeast Texas, as well as portions of western Arkansas. And so I went to Muskogee and was talking with local leaders there about why. Why is this happening? And they said the only issue is our federal delegation refuses to fight for funding. It's all about funding. And not only is that a critical resource for Muskogee and the surrounding areas, but it also provides 250 jobs in that community. And those are just going to go away overnight. Additionally, education is something that is extremely important to me and has been under attack in this state. We have to continue to invest in our students and our teachers and work to bring our education system into the 21st century, but that takes money. I have learned throughout the course of this campaign of it's called the Federal Impact Aid Program, where our federal delegation is refusing to fight for the money that is owed to our public schools for federal property taxes on federal lands in the state of Oklahoma. So you think about the number of military bases we have here in Oklahoma. You think about the Native American lands that are held in trust by the federal government. That's a lot of land where these public schools, which as we all know, for better or worse, are funded by property tax, are not getting their money. Hit particularly hard is Lawton Public School District, Mid-Del Public School Districts, and we all know that those districts are in desperate need of funding. And so I've asked our members of our state legislature, why is this not happening? What can we do? And they said, well, first of all, we've got to get you elected because you're willing to pay attention to this. Senator Langford refuses to address it. He says he has other priorities. I can't imagine what would be more of a priority than ensuring that our public schools are funded and literally investing in our future. Additionally, part of the platform is immigration reform. As an attorney, I represent businesses here in Oklahoma that sponsor immigrants of exceptional ability, that's scientists, engineers, things like that, to legally come to the United States and work on a visa. But because I do that, I know what it costs and I know the amount of time it takes. We're looking at about 2 years per application. We're looking at about 20 grand in fees to the government and legal fees. And I think about someone, the everyday person who seeks to come to the U.S. for a better life, or, God forbid, they're fleeing persecution or something like that. They can't afford that, and they definitely don't have the time. And so we have a major backlog in our immigration system right now, the system is just too cumbersome. Of course we need a system that appropriately vets people. Of course we need a system that ensures that we know where people are going and that we are protecting our national security. Of course we do. But it doesn't have to be this system. It hasn't been overhauled in 30 years, and we live in a very different time right now. And so I am supportive of reforming that system, not only to uphold our humanitarian obligations, which contrary to the previous administration and folks like James Langford, we actually have signed on to international agreements saying that we will accept people seeking to come to the United States who are fleeing persecution. Also, people who come to the United States seeking to do so legally to work. We are a party to numerous international agreements providing for those things. And slightly less importantly, it is an economic issue here in Oklahoma. Anyone who's been to the grocery store, been to a fast food restaurant, or knows someone who owns a business knows that we have a workforce shortage here in Oklahoma. And what better way could we address that than, first of all, properly funding our public schools and paying teachers what they deserve and getting students prepared for the workforce, but also bringing more people to the state who want to work here, who are willing to work here, who will then contribute to our communities. So immigration reform affects many different aspects of this platform. In addition, right now we've got major issues, as we all know, with needing gun safety reform. We have to protect the rights of women and all people who give birth. This is something that we've all seen has come under attack recently, and I am a pro-choice candidate. I am unashamed to say so. It's mind-boggling to me that there are Democrats out there who don't say that, but I am, and I'm supportive of taking legislative action to codify Roe versus Wade or something similar. I think we need to ensure those protections are in place to protect people in states like Oklahoma, because people in Oklahoma shouldn't have different rights than people in New York or California. I think we have seen this attack take place, and we have to ensure that these protections are in place. Same thing for the LGBTQ plus community. We've seen the issues with the bathroom bills here in Oklahoma and things. It's more of the pandering that just takes away from the work that should actually be getting done, but we can take action at the federal level to address these things and ensure that protections are in place for people here in Oklahoma. I am also supportive of instituting responsible gun reforms, such as closing the gun show loophole, such as universal background checks, such as instituting a waiting period. All of these things are just common sense. They don't infringe on our Second Amendment rights. And the situation in Tulsa just the other day, if we had a waiting period in place, that there would likely be 4 people alive right now who are not. And so there is so much work to do. And again, regardless of your political affiliation, I hope that there is at least a piece of our platform and the work that I want to do and the plans we have that you can get behind. And if there is, unfortunately, a huge part of this process is raising money. And so go to our website, it's jasonforoklahoma.com. We've got some materials with us. If you can donate. If you can sign up to volunteer, please do that. Tell your friends, request a yard sign, request a t-shirt. This election is truly going to take all of us to get someone like James Langford out of this office. We know he's bad for Oklahoma. We know he doesn't care about everyday Oklahomans, but he is entrenched. He is holding on to this seat, and his big money donors, most of whom are out of state, are helping him stay there. And so we need a grassroots effort here in Oklahoma to take it back for the people of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So we just have a couple questions for you. What would make someone choose to vote for you over the other candidates like Madison Horn and Joe Glenn?
Sure. I think, first of all, we need to set forth the candidate who is best prepared to stand toe-to-toe with James Langford. I am a litigator by trade. James Langford, while not a lawyer, he is someone who we all know is very well spoken. He's nice to listen to. He has a good voice. He's a pastor. I shouldn't say nice to listen to. We don't like what he said. he has a great voice. Yes. But James Langford is not dumb. He is someone who studies. He knows what he's talking about. He has all the resources of the federal government behind him. And so we need someone who can help convince Oklahomans that, yeah, this person can do this job. It is important enough to, I'll get out and vote, or I'll give money to get this person, to get James Langford out, and I'll bring this other person in who I think can do better. And that, it sounds like it's simple, but it is certainly not. And to do that, we need to put forth a candidate who has the skills to do it. I've already worked in the federal government. I know how the ins and outs of how the executive branch operates with Congress. I know, I watched a lot in the Trump administration, a lot of stuff go down, good and bad. But I have that experience of seeing on a daily basis the things that James Langford just knows as secondhand. I think my legal background is critically important because we have seen an attack on our democracy, an attack on our Constitution, and we need candidates who understand both of those. James Langford, he may or may not, he certainly doesn't respect those, but we need a candidate who is able to call him on the carpet on these issues, and that candidate is me. Also, I think it's important to put forth a candidate who, in the general election, who can relate to both Republicans and Democrats, because the numbers here in Oklahoma tell us that we've got to get Republicans to vote for a Democrat, because if we just have straight party voting, the Republican's going to win every time. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. I have the good fortune of having grown up in rural western Oklahoma, have a lot of contacts there. We know it's a conservative area. I've been an attorney, I am an attorney here in Oklahoma City. My network's been here about 10 years. I've worked in DC, and so I can take these complex issues and deliver them to any group, no matter who I'm talking to, in a way that relates. And that's important, a way that takes the issues that people are concerned about and prepares a plan and addresses the issues people have. And that's something that not all the candidates here can do. I also think it's important that I've lived in Oklahoma my whole life. I've voted in Oklahoma my whole life. I have never once called myself a conservative. I've been a Democrat my whole life, and I consider myself a progressive, and I think that's exactly what we need right now. We don't need people who seek to hold us back. We don't need people who seek to take us back 50 years ago, which is exactly what's happening right now. We need smart people who are willing to put in the work, who can take on James Langford after June 28th and get this job done, and I think I'm the best one to do it.
Do you have experience working across the aisle?
So yes, as a Democrat in the Trump administration, working under two Secretaries of State, Tillerson and Pompeo, neither of whom I agree with on just about anything, absolutely. The biggest project I was on at the State Department was the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal. And so I traveled with the government to The Hague to litigate with the Iranians, and it was something that President Trump didn't even know existed. Because President Trump would have pulled us out of the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal on day one.
He wasn't aware of The Hague?
No, that the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal existed.
Oh, okay.
I assume he knows where The Hague is.
Okay, I was going to say, how does he not know where that's at?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was, given our relations with Iran, which have been tenuous since 1982, it was just something that the White House was not involved in on a daily basis. But the administration's posture toward Iran was something where we had to be extremely careful. And we had to put forth a message that we're here arguing on legal principle only, we're not arguing policy, while the Iranians are in the room literally screaming death to America, because that's how it works. But also at the same time pacify our Secretaries of State and the legal advisor, who was also a Trump appointee, that we were not pushing an Obama agenda, that we were not selling out to the Iranians, because that was always a concern. This office that I worked in was the same one you all probably remember in early in the second term of the Obama administration, where we dropped the pallets of cash in Iran as satisfaction of a judgment that the Iranians had paid in full. That was the office I worked in. So it was a very tenuous situation. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about it. And so to answer the question directly, do I have experience working across the aisle and working with people whose opinions are different than mine? Absolutely. At the end of the day, there's a job to do, and no matter what, in any circumstance, my objective always will be doing what's best for the people of Oklahoma. And I think that experience that I have there where I had an objective, I had an assignment, and it was to help represent the U.S. government at the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal while all this other stuff was going on. That's one example that has prepared me for this role.
Great. So, hot topic, gun control. You talked about it some. How are you going to approach gun reform without just completely scaring the Republicans? Because any talk of it, they're just like, no.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to ask, I always, when I address these hot button issues with people who I know are going to have at least I think going into it, a different view than I do, I ask them what they think about it. That's the absolute best way to figure out how you can get on the same page. And you hear them out, you hear what their concerns are, and then you meet in the middle. The process of governing is about compromise. A lot of times in politics today, people hate to say that everyone wants 100% of what they're asking for, but that's not the job of government. Government's supposed to move slowly, unfortunately. Government is supposed to, whack away at the pie where what's left in the middle is a little bit of good for everyone. On something as important as gun control, though, where it has impacted us in this state numerous times, there is room, and I've talked to Republicans about it already, there is room for negotiation. The conservatives I've spoken with have no issue with a waiting period because these are people who shoot for sport, they keep guns in their homes for their own personal protection, and not a single one of them, when I've raised the question, would you have had an issue waiting 3 days to get your firearm, have said, absolutely, I think that infringes on my rights, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. Not a single one. But our folks in Washington, D.C. are telling us that people don't want that. Additionally, the universal background checks. When I've asked folks about that on the other side of the aisle, not a single one of them have an issue with it. In fact, they're like, why aren't we already doing this? Because this just happened here, now is the time. And not just here, it's obviously happened elsewhere in the country, but Oklahomans are ready for change here. Oklahomans are ready to institute common sense reforms. We can't be extreme. And we do have a Second Amendment to protect. I'm a lawyer. I've sworn an oath to the Constitution, both as a lawyer and at the U.S. Department of State. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I understand what it says. It does not say what we have right now. I can promise you that. You can't convince me. You can try. I'll listen to you, but you can't convince me that that's what it says. But to answer the question, there is room here, and I've seen it as I visited with Republicans already.
The ones I visited with have also agreed with raising the age to 21.
Yeah. I often get if you can't buy alcohol until you're 21, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun.
Or what if I rent a car?
That's what 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, rent a car.
Or buy cigarettes.
Right.
Rent a hotel.
Yeah. And so that people.
But everyone in this room, obviously, we're ready.
Yeah.
Don't worry, man. I think the 18-year-olds at the very least maybe should take a training course. But to be fair, if you are old enough to vote, you should be able to protect your home and not wait till you're 25 for that one. Because renting a car, as Money said, is not a constitutional right. But I do not mind if someone's under 21 going through a training course to earn that. I don't mind that concept. Because everybody's argument is, well, if you join the army,
It's okay. We'll just give Jason his time.
8:30 is all you.
There's a lot to unpack here.
So you were talking about chopping things apart, and so the Build Back Better plan. Is there pieces of that you want to chop apart?
I mean, the Build Back Better plan has been hacked at over
and
over, and what we finally got was not what anyone wanted, but it had gone through the process. So what was left? No. I think we needed all of it. I think we needed more. And had I been there, I would have been pushing for more. But I think we still need more. And like infrastructure, for example, we're getting a chunk of money here in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, it's going to our state's leadership, so who knows what's going to happen to that. But we are getting money here, but it's not enough. It's not enough to provide access to high-speed broadband in all rural areas. It's not enough to address erosion and flood control in eastern Oklahoma. It's not enough to provide water resources and water protection and shelter belts in western Oklahoma. There is so much that needs to be done that has not been done for years, that bit of money, it'll go somewhere, but it's not nearly enough. So no, there's not a piece of Build Back Better that, especially because it was fully funded, that I would have been opposed to.
That's my
I think we were at time. So
Thank you so much.
Of course. Happy to be here and nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me. And we've got some materials. If you have time, we'll.
Recording
leave them out
stopped.
and-
Thank you. Yeah, let's just like have like an informal, and then I'll get Greg set up.
You need some medicine?
Yes.
Everybody on here says thank you. Oki, do you
A
know?
little bit. Only this is one of the first, like, people like in public, like, it was nice and welcoming.
Okay.
And I didn't get that at my own party.
Okay, well.
So, but I like her. I mean, I'm not saying she doesn't like to speak. I'm not, good question. I don't know what all she's got on. The fact that you work in a whole bunch of different places.
So thank you. Jamie
I
Miles.
wish she went for a different seat, so I could look people. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Well, I mean, the problem.
Not
There was up to 200 at one point, but there's only 10 right now.
Always fucking.
Yeah.
I'm Republican. I'm so afraid that guy's
It's
gonna
very-
bring back the witchcraft trials. Holy crap, that one scares the shit.
Jamie Miles.
That one's crazy.
You know, Madison just moved to Oklahoma for the seat. And everybody knows
Yeah, that had real trauma that was.
Yeah.
I knew Greg.
Yeah, I know. We got to put up the best
It's not
camera
his
to
shirt.
take him on too.
Oh, Greg Clyde is next. I'm gonna end this live and start a new
I
one.
want to see the fact that he's used his church as a tactic to
Right.
raise it so much
Right.
money and then lose.
Yeah.
Watch it. I'm probably going to lose, but I didn't spend nearly as much money as he did.
You gave our kid his
Look it up.
cul-de-sac.
It's like,
Oh.
we're even going to raise $10,000.
So, you know,
Right? But I don't take shit.
his first